So I'm exercising again, which is awesome because that helps me relieve stress. My husband and I just went and bought this um, an elliptical and a stationary bike all in one. And I used it for the first time today, and it's kind of awesome, kind of amazing. And I think I'm gonna like it. I think that exercising again is going to help in so many ways. However, that's not the topic of today. Topic of today is kids. My husband and I are thinking of trying to get pregnant. Now, as I've previously stated, it's unlikely that I can get pregnant. A lot of damage was done to my insides from the abuse that I suffered, or rather, as a result of the abuse that I suffered as a child. And I've been told by more than one doctor that I can't have kids. However, I have not ever been given a definitive no. My current doctor sees no reason why it's not possible. She thinks that it might be difficult, and it may never happen. She does think that it's possible, and my husband and I are going to try to get me knocked up. In the process of making this decision, because the decision to have a child is a huge decision. I'm not saying that people who, became pregnant accidentally or bad people or anything, or people who became pregnant and didn't have an abortion or bad people, didn't give their child up for adoption or bad people. But I am saying that you're bringing a life into this world, and that is a major undertaking, not just for your body, but also for the rest of your life. Not just for the next 18 years, because you will forever be a parent. Unless you give the child up, in which case I guess you're not a parent. But with the exception of that kind of stuff, like you'll always be a parent. And even to do health pass, you're a parent. So it's kind of a huge undertaking. Being responsible for feeding, clothing, and caring for another human being. Being responsible for ensuring that that person grows up with a proper sense of self, with empathy, with the ability to care for others, with a sense of conscience, and all of that jazz. It's huge. So anyway, I was talking to my husband, and I asked him if he thought this was a bad reason to have kids, because this is basically my reasoning for wanting so badly to have a kid. So many kids are born into bad circumstances. They're given up for adoption, and they're raised in a state system, in foster care. They're born and they're abused or neglected or mistreated. And sometimes not even in a conscious way. Sometimes it's just that people are ineffective parents. They don't know how to teach a kid or how to care for a kid or what a kid needs. And, sometimes it's, they look to their parents' patterns, and maybe their parents are ineffective parents. So, there's a lot of kids out there that are just not in the greatest of circumstances. There are a lot that are abused. There are a lot that are mistreated and neglected, and in a conscious way. So, I can't adopt. With my criminal history, it would be very, very difficult for me to adopt, and I don't have the funds to do so. I tried taking my nephew in, and that didn't work out. So, you know, I want to shape a human life. I want to shape a human life that is going to go out into the world and make it a better place. I want, instead of just sitting back and watching all of these kids grow up in these bad circumstances and make bad choices because of those circumstances and never learn adaptive coping mechanisms, never learn, how to care for another person or how to think of another person's needs and when to put themselves first as well, because you don't always need to put the needs of another above yourself. It kind of depends on the situation, like you're hungry and you have a burger and you pass a homeless person who, is also hungry. Well, maybe you give the burger to the homeless person because the homeless person is in more need of that burger. They don't have the ability to go get their own burger. You do. You have money, you have a job, you have the ability to go to, the fast food designation of your choice and buy a burger. And so maybe you put the other person's needs first. But you don't always do that. Like like in a relationship, you don't always want to give in. You don't always want to say, well, the other person's needs are more important than mine. And so it's kind of like a situational thing, and it's something that a lot of people don't learn. And I want to create a life and shape it in a way that hopefully it'll be a good person. Because I think we need more good people. And I used to think that I didn't want to have kids because, what if I'm as crazy as my mother and then I'm going to be doing more damage to it than not? And B, if the world sucks so bad that I don't want to bring a child into that. But then I realized that for a small child, I am the world. Me and my husband would be the world. And a lot of child development takes place in the home before the kid's even old enough to go to school. So, I don't know, it's become important to me. I think that stepping away from the world is the wrong decision to make. Instead, I have to be immersing myself in it. And, one day I will pass. Also, I want to do a better job than my parents. Like, my parents fucked up so bad. Gloria, in particular, fucked up really bad. But my dad as well. Like, it's like the neighbor said, there's so much more to raising a kid than just feeding it and giving it shelter. I don't remember being taught to ride a bike. I don't remember being given a set of rules, like house rules that I was supposed to follow. Kind of just, I got in trouble as I did things after the fact. I was not supposed to do that. In a lot of ways, my dad was just ineffective. In other ways, he was abusive and he was an alcoholic, and I want, there's just so much dysfunction in my family. I want there to be a generation of my family that's not dysfunctional. I want to raise a kid, and I want that kid to grow up to be my age and look back and say, not just my mom did the best she could, given the circumstances, but that, my mom excelled. My mom was a good mom. And I want my kid to be able to look back and say, my dad was a good dad. If there were rules, there was also a lot of fun and a lot of play. There were rules, but there was understanding and compassion. Part of it's about, none of it's about proving to my parents. My child would never meet my mother. Even should she somehow hear that I've had a child, she would be allowed nowhere near my child, or me for that matter. And I actually had a dream in which my father found out that I was pregnant and came to the hospital to see the kid. And my husband and I told him that he could not see the child. And I think that I would make that decision. Because I noticed with my brother that my father took on the role of parent before he was even a parent. He took it upon himself to discipline his grandchildren how he saw fit, even when, my brother or the mother of the child was available, before my dad even got custody of the youngest one. And I would be fearful, like he comes around and he's drunk and my kid sees that and thinks, I don't want I wouldn't want my kid to see that. I wouldn't want my kid to be around addiction and see active addiction. I wouldn't want my kid to see the anger or the violence. I wouldn't want my kid to see his cousins being whipped or spanked or whatever. The dogs are fighting. Like play fighting, they're not fighting. I wouldn't want any of that. I would want. And I know you can't shelter kids forever, but dysfunctional family members would not be allowed to have my child, specifically not alone. And granted, there are some issues with some members of my husband's family that, maybe those people wouldn't be allowed alone with the kid. But a lot of those people, if they displayed any kind of dysfunctional behavior, it would be in private. So as long as they're there, it's not an issue. However, with my father, it wouldn't be in private. It would be cussing me in public. It would be threatening to harm me in front of the child. It would be, hitting my child's cousin in front of my child. And I wouldn't want my child to see that and confuse that with love, because that's not love. The way in which my father disciplines is not love. It's a warped idea of what discipline should be. There's so much ugliness, and I wouldn't want my kids to see it. So, my husband thinks that's the right idea. My husband thinks that's the right choice to make. It's still a struggle for me, because on the one hand, I would like to think that I would do whatever was best for my. I would like to think that I would do whatever was best for my child. However, there is still love that I have for my dad and my brother, and it's hard for me to think that I would be cutting them out from a generation of their own family. But then I have to stop and think, are they really family? And it's just something that's been on my mind lately, because I go back and forth on this wanting to try to have a kid thing. And half the time I'm like, I really want a kid. Like, I know that I would be a good mom. I have so much love in me, and I would love to share that with kids and teach them and raise them to be a good person. But the other part of me is like, well, but with your family, I mean, it takes a village. And you can't rely on your family because your family, my family, they're people that I wouldn't want to be a part of that village. I think there would definitely never be any reconciliation between me and that side of my family. That makes me very sad indeed. So that's all for now. Just thinking about maybe having a kid on the bright side. It helps sex. But we do decide to want sex. And, we're still young, healthy people in their 30s. So we'd be good. You know. We're up to that part of the test. So now that I've thoroughly embarrassed my husband, we go, and I'll be back tomorrow because I do this Monday through Friday.